In February 1637, a single flower bulb sold in Amsterdam for roughly 6,000 florins. That was enough money to buy a house on one of the city's finest canals. Not a flower arrangement. Not a garden's worth of flowers. One bulb buried in dirt that hadn't even bloomed yet. 3 days later, buyers at an auction in Haarlem refused to bid on identical bulbs at any price at all. The market didn't dip. It didn't correct. It simply stopped existing, almost overnight. And what happened in between those two moments is still one of the strangest financial stories ever recorded, because the people at the center of it weren't fools. Many of them were exactly the kind of careful, successful people you'd never expect to be at the center of a financial disaster. Let's put you in the room. It's the winter of 1636, in a smoky tavern in Haarlem, one of the small inns where tulip trading actually happened. You're a moderately successful brewer? You have savings, a house, a stable trade. Everyone around you is talking about the same thing. A baker 3 streets over just traded a modest plot of land for a handful of tulip bulbs, and within a month, those same bulbs were worth triple what the land had been. You didn't grow up wealthy, you've worked for everything you have, and you're watching, night after night, as people with less business sense than you turn small trades into life-changing sums, seemingly just by holding the right bulb for a few weeks. The bulbs themselves aren't even present at most of these trades, they're still in the ground, months from blooming. What's actually being traded is a contract, a promise to deliver a bulb later for a price agreed on now. You don't need much capital to get in. A small down payment, a signature, and you're holding a contract that might be worth double by spring. So, you do what your neighbors are doing. You put down a portion of your savings on a contract for a rare variety called the Switzer. Within weeks, its price has climbed further. You watch other men in the tavern turn a similar trade into enough money to buy a house outright. The tulip everyone truly dreams of owning is called the Semper Augustus, a bulb so rare that fewer than a dozen were known to exist, prized for a striking red and white streaked pattern that, unknown to anyone at the time, was actually caused by a virus infecting the bulb. Not that anyone cared why it looked that way. It was beautiful. It was scarce. And scarcity was the entire engine driving prices upward. By January 1637, contract prices for the most sought-after bulbs had climbed more than 20 times over in just a few years. And then, in the first week of February, at an auction meant to be routine, something shifted. A batch of bulbs went up for bid. Nobody bid. The auctioneer lowered the price. Still, nothing. He lowered it again. The silence in that room is one of the most quietly devastating moments in economic history, because it meant the thing every single contract holder had been counting on, that there would always be a next buyer willing to pay more, had simply stopped being true. So what actually caused this, mechanically, and what's the real pattern worth remembering? Tulip Mania is widely considered history's first fully documented speculative bubble, and the mechanism inside it is almost identical to every speculative bubble that's followed since. It starts with something genuinely scarce and desirable, in this case, a rare, virus-streaked flower that had recently arrived in Europe from the Ottoman Empire and instantly became a status symbol for the newly wealthy Dutch merchant class. Genuine scarcity creates genuine early price increases, and those early increases are real and rational. The danger begins at the next stage, when people stop buying the underlying thing because they want it and start buying it purely because they expect someone else will pay more for it later. At that point, the price is no longer connected to what the object is actually worth, it's connected only to the confidence that a future buyer exists. Add in the futures contracts, which let people control bulbs worth far more than they could actually afford by putting down a small fraction up front, and you get leverage, gains and losses both amplified, with very little real money actually changing hands until the contract came due. This is the specific, recognizable pattern worth carrying with you. Watch for the exact moment a market shifts from, "I want this because it's useful or beautiful," to, "I want this because I can sell it to someone else for more." That shift is invisible from inside the room. Nobody in that Haarlem tavern thought they were behaving irrationally. Every single person could point to a neighbor who had already profited exactly the way they hoped to. That, more than greed, is what actually fuels a bubble, not stupidity, but genuinely reasonable people responding to genuinely real evidence, right up until the evidence stops being real. It's also worth being honest about something historians have only clarified in recent decades: the popular version of this story. The one describing entire fortunes wiped out and the whole Dutch economy brought to its knees comes largely from a colorful account written 2 centuries later, in 1841, long after anyone involved was alive to correct it. Modern historians studying the actual court and contract records, most notably Anne Goldgar, have found that the crash mainly affected a relatively contained group of wealthy merchants and professional traders, rather than devastating Dutch society as a whole. The lesson isn't that the mania didn't happen. The price data is real and well documented. The lesson is that even the stories we tell about financial disasters get dramatized and distorted over time, and the loudest version of a story is rarely the most accurate one. 3 things worth remembering from this. First, Tulip Mania didn't require stupid people. It required ordinary, reasonably sensible people watching real evidence of real profits in a market with no historical precedent to warn them what a ceiling might look like. Second, leverage is what turns a price correction into a catastrophe. Without those futures contracts requiring only a small down payment, the same drop in tulip prices would have been a disappointing year for flower growers, not a defining moment in financial history. Third, the stories we tell about financial disasters are often more dramatic than the disasters themselves, which means the real skill isn't just spotting a bubble. It's staying skeptical of the version of events being repeated the loudest, whether that's in 1637 or right now. If you want more of history's financial disasters broken down like this, subscribe, because this channel is building a full series on the collapses history tends to gloss over. And next time, we're going back to ancient Mesopotamia to look at the Code of Hammurabi, the first written legal code in human history, and the surprisingly specific, sometimes brutal punishments it laid out for financial crimes nearly 4,000 years ago,